All right. All right. I guess it's time to get started. Uh, while they're still filing in. Thank you all for coming. I guess I'll do a little shameless self promotion. There's been a schedule change, and I'm doing a Cape Cod presentation tomorrow that just got moved to the next session in here. So if you had any interest or knew anybody, if you could spread that word. So uh, thank you all for coming. These sessions, I've been in the industry almost 20 years, and it's this is where you gain some information. Hopefully, that's where I gained a lot of information. I used to spend a lot of time reviewing old presentations in the BPCA or whatever it used to be called, ACI, and download them to learn, because you really have to constantly keep learning in this industry. So getting a little ahead of the game here. I'm Jeff Flaherty. I'm the founder of Wise Home Energy. I've been in the industry close to 20 years. I didn't change my slides. I don't know why that's there. Hopefully the rest of this thing will work out. So I do want to say that I'm going to present some things here that are really maybe building science, maybe just my belief. Consult a lawyer. Don't just go and do what I say. Maybe don't go and do what I don't say. But just use your own best judgment in a home. Don't just follow what you hear. So how I got started in the industry, I went to work for Honeywell. Doing program implementation for the Empower New York program, and didn't really know much about the industry. I knew construction, but so after a little while I got going, and also did a little quality assurance visits. I do 1 day a week, and I went out to a home in 2008, and you just get some paperwork. You go out to the home, you see a work scope. It was like a $17,000 work scope. The home was next to the Erie Canal. So if you're familiar with the Erie Canal, there's spots where some of the homes are actually below the canal. And I got to the home and I said, "Ma'am, why am I here?" And she said, "I've lived here for 7 years and I had some work done 7 months ago." Something about sevens in this story. Spent $17,000 and now I'm sick. And the first thing I looked at, there's windows, single pane windows, like an old farmhouse. Moisture, mold-like substance on it. So she takes me around the house. I go in the basement, and there's water on the basement. And I say, "Oh, is this water just seasonal? Did this just pop up, this month?" "Oh no, we get water, all the time in the basement." Uh-oh. The other thing she had a concern with is this foamed atrium ceiling. Water was leaking out of it, and I said, "Did the roof leak develop after the foam?" "Oh no, the roof was already leaking when they foamed it." Uh-oh. Now, I didn't really know that much in 2008. So then she took me up to this kind of knee wall cavity. And since I was doing QA 1 day a week and I worked for Honeywell, my PPE was really my hand and my flashlight on my phone. And we opened up this knee wall and started walking in, and the thing was completely black. It was, I didn't want to scare her. I backed out of the home, and I stood in front of this person where I couldn't say anything to this person because that was not my role. But just to look at somebody and think they spent $17,000 to destroy their home and their health, I walked out of there thinking, wow, this is more serious than I had been led to believe. You can really screw up somebody's greatest investment and their health. That's scary to me. So I started getting really interested in the nitty-gritty of home performance. So a few years later, I decided that I would hang my shingle. This didn't look too hard, so I decided to start Wise Home Energy and found out that it is a lot harder than I thought, and continued on my education journey. 2016, we sponsored the Proof is Possible tour. If you guys, anybody familiar with Corbett Lunsford? Does a lot of excellent educational videos for contractors and really homeowners. But the kind of the theory of the Proof is Possible tour was to show you can prove your work, hence the name, Proof. Invited a bunch of contractors in our area. Maybe 1 or 2 showed up. A couple months later, I was at one of these BPCA meetings, and a guy from a big company said, where do you get training on this stuff? Where do you learn how to do this stuff? And I couldn't tell him that 2 months ago I had a guy in who would, help with that. So the other thing I just want to point out, anybody familiar with mobile homes, spray foaming the underbellies of mobile homes? So I'm going to tell you that I invented the nick tuck technique. Basically, if you spray the underbelly of a mobile home, there's a rim joist. If you don't cut around the border, how I found this out is somebody convinced me that I should foam an underbelly. And I did 1 or 2 and the blower door didn't move. So I sent my crew back out. I said, go out there, turn on that blower door and smoke that thing. Not the blower door, the house. And tell me where that smoke's coming out. And it was coming out the rim joist. So I did not come up with the name nip tuck, but I sent my findings to NYSERDA and I said, I think you need to develop a protocol on this. So I met 3 other people who have invented this, so not sure the timetable. I'll have to look at my email. Maybe they come up with a name. So, but that's kind of my passion, is like figuring things out, just because I installed something that somebody said was a good idea, how do we know that it actually works? So I haven't changed my slides. If there's one thing you learn, you want to learn something from every session. When you're on the highway, you want to move over. Don't be in the left-hand lane. Don't be one of those people, would you? So at least you learn something here. So when I thought about why does work fail, I thought of this story of the coach who said, with a kid who wasn't really living up to his potential, said, son, what is your problem? Is it ignorance or apathy? And he said, Coach, I don't know, and I don't care. And I thought those are the 2 reasons that works fails. And then I was like, nah, maybe there's more. So this is what I came up with. There's ignorance, apathy, there's fear of maybe not learning something new, or fear of being held accountable, and then there's greed. And those are the 4 things I came up with. Feel free to tell me if there's something else. So we're going to go through some case studies that I have been out to the homes, or my company has been out to the homes, and see installed items that maybe didn't lead to the expectations that either the program had or the customer had. It probably led to the expectations that maybe the company had. So the names have been changed to protect the ignorant, I guess we'll say, or apathetic. It's kind of a favorite quote of mine. This guy was the defense secretary some years ago, and he said, there are known knowns. There are things we know that we know. He said, there are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things that we know we don't know. Like, I know I'm going to have dinner tonight, but I don't know where it is. And then there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we do not know, we don't know. So I applaud you all for coming here to this conference, because the truth is, who I should be presenting this to are the people that didn't come to this conference. I know people in my area that I've never, ever seen here. I wonder how they get better. And then I stumble on their work. Yes, Mr. Ed. I mean, you're not Mr. Ed.
What was the nip tuck issue?
So when you foam an underbelly, there's really a cavity between the floor and the belly, and it's not sealed. So you need to go around and cut that last foot, tuck it up if it's a rodent barrier, but you have to figure out a way to seal that rim joist. And I know a lot of Hale's guys are here, but I know Hale said it dropped at 500 CFM and extra. So it's a big deal. The problem is when it's not done, and the test when it's not done is, if you do a blower door, to 50 pascals and you pressure pan the ducts, they should be below 3 pascals. If you foam the belly correctly, that will take care of that. You don't have to duct seal. The ducts are now within the thermal envelope. I didn't change my old slides, but this should be at the end. But do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So the first home, this is really not a program home. It's really an Energy Star built home. It's a 2-year-old home, and it was a complaint of 6-degree temperature difference between the first and second floor, baby's nursery. Not a production builder. This is a custom built home. And the gentleman called us up, and I kind of load these calls because a new built home, usually the homeowner doesn't want to spend any money. He wants your report, and he wants to go back to the builder and fix it. Well, look at your contract. Did it say you were going to get comfort? That's it's probably not going to say that. Builders are kind of locked down on their contracts and their subcontractors. So what we found was big old giant cantilever, not air sealed. Builders still like to, push the fiberglass in there. And so we diagnosed it. The guy wanted it fixed. And so this is one of the techniques of diagnosing a cantilever. So we're kind of taught in these classes to pressure pan a duct run, and that'll tell you really how tight the duct is. So if you just put it over there, the duct that'll show you the tightness of the duct. If you put the probe below the ductwork, now you're measuring the cantilever, and you can really tell how leaky that cantilever is. So that one showed that it was 10 pascals, which equates roughly to about 20% outdoors. So we opened it up, foamed it all. Rim joist, these folks love their fiber. I have nothing against fiber except the way it performs. So we pulled it out, spray foamed it, covered the blocks, I believe, where we had access to, and then 2-year-old home, we pulled all the insulation out of the attic and air sealed it and insulated it. Good, my slides here because I couldn't find this morning. So we took it from 2174 down to 1479, 33%. It was built to code. My fear was the furnace was going to be oversized. I didn't do a great calculation to see if that really made the 3 air changes per hour. One of the I shouldn't say scams. One of the business practices of builders is they get cousin Joey to get his blower door license, and then he does their blower doors. So what I haven't figured out, if anybody could ever let me know, is when they file the code testing, can the homeowner go to the code office in their town and get the documents? Because that's the thing we need when a guy or lady with a new built home calls us with a complaint. We need to see that document. And the end result is blower doors are a great number, but it doesn't tell you everything. If that leakage is in the top of the house, that's going to be a problem. And for example, so the number, you have to be able to quantify it to something. Similar to, like, I once fell off a 40-foot extension ladder. Luckily, I was on the second step. So you got to bring a little relevancy to it. End result was this client was very happy, wrote us a nice review, and there was a time when I would have walked into a home and said, hey, this big house with 2,100 blower door is pretty good, pretty good. Watch out for pretty goods. Watch out for not bads. Watch out for pretty tights, because they're just, they're loosey-goosey words. So I think I built this as folks would tell me what the reason is. Was it ignorance? Was it apathy? Was it fear? Was it greed? And so we'll kind of go through these, and at the end, please feel free to give me some feedback. This home, 1925 built ranch, done with a program job. About a year later, we got called in to say, hey, fix the ice. It's kind of an interesting home with a window that you got into the attic. And so when we went through, I guess we give the conclusion at the top there. But we started with a 2300 blower door, and we ended with a 1229 blower door on a home that was air sealed and insulated the year before. So what we found when we got up there is there was uneven insulation. As we started pulling it back, there was kind of maybe a fire. There was a false ceiling. And you could see it in the home. This was their air sealing. We call this 40% air sealing on the left there. On the right, I'm not sure what we call that. The IR was showing something funny, and then we found this kind of big, you can see on the right, there was like kind of these false ceilings and drywall, and it turned into a nightmare of a fix. But maybe if the contractor had done a blower door test, they would have caught this. Or maybe if they would have cared, they would have caught this. So I'm a big fan of the blower door. We're going to talk about it later on. So we vacuumed it all out, air sealed it, and dropped that blower door more than half. 48% drop in leakage. And that's winner, winner, chicken dinner. So not everybody's going to have the money to do the job twice. The old contractor joke, we do it right because we do it twice. Like, who's going to pay for that second time, right? PLCE, SAR, TRC, sorry, I'm not, if there's TRC folks here. Wasn't there a TRC acronym we used years ago? Oh, there's volume. So same thing here. You know, was it ignorance, apathy? I think it's probably 3 of these. Probably not fear from this particular contractor. Let's say I have a suspicion I know who the contractor is. Case number 3. So we went into a home, this is like a 10, 20-year-old home. And this is like a townhome ranch. Love these things, right? Who doesn't love a ranch? One of the hardest things to measure. I mean, besides a mobile home. Length times width. Nice overhangs. Fiber bat. Can pull it back, air seal it properly. Contractor, we saw the contract. It was $1,400 of air sealing. When you see this right by the hatch, that means they didn't air seal anywhere else if they didn't bother to air seal by the hatch. So our proposal was to pull this all out. We really said you should call the appropriate program and show them these pictures, and they did. And for some odd reason, the contractor didn't want to choose us. They chose another contractor. So I'd love to go back and do a blower door and see what happened here. But it was like, from a business owner, I would love to make $1,400 to not do the work and then do it times 5 days a week and then do it times 52. But it isn't something I could sleep with. And so I don't know how that person could sleep with it. And the question is, what's the disconnect? That was probably a pretty large company. What's the disconnect? Somebody in the organization hopefully knows how to do the work. Is it being passed down to the appropriate people in the field? What's your material count? I don't think they used a lot of can foam in that job because we didn't see any can foam. So this one right here, case 4, defining the thermal boundary. This is something that is a terminology that I think that should be used a lot more because you can, in my own office, we can look at a house and say, what is the thermal boundary? We have to define the thermal boundary. This was a job that we're a subcontractor for a couple weatherization agencies. They sent us out to insulate the attic and the walls. And the scope comes in, it says just that, insulate the attic and the walls. I'd like it a little more detailed, but you know, you get with what you get. And so we go to the home, and I'm talking to the guy, and I said, well, I want to pop up and look at your attic. You know, how's your attic? He goes, things have been great since I got a new roof. I'm like, you got a new roof? What? And I pop my head up in the attic, and well, let's go to the basement first. There's some moisture in the basement. We got a porch that's conditioned, unconditioned. What does the customer think it is? What does the program think it is? What does the contractor think it is? The customer didn't think it was conditioned. It had a little duct out there, but this is the basement underneath it. So we got a little moisture here. We got this fiber that I would probably tell you is pretty wet. And they foamed the rest of the rim joist. They may have even foamed that, but like that should have come down. That should have come down. It probably should have been considered an unconditioned porch. The customer viewed it that way. It wasn't heating enough. That's what they should have done. Still would have had to foam it because it's the basement ceiling is part of the thermal boundary, and then address the water. What they did was they foamed the roof deck. So as I looked at it, I said, well, this is a perfect attic. Why would you foam this roof deck? And luckily I was able to dig and get an answer of why. And it was because there was acoustical tile ceiling. So I got that answer. I sent my rep over there and I said, go up in that attic, dig above that ceiling and show me what you got. And Pinocchio was there and it was lath and plaster. So they were able to switch the thermal boundary because they misrepresented the facts. I don't know if that was on purpose, but they left all the original insulation there. So you don't want to leave a double thermal barrier. Sometimes I go to work and there's a cooler in the fridge, and I think to myself, is the cooler trying to keep the contents warm, or is the fridge trying to keep the cooler cold? The cooler doesn't know what it's doing, and neither does this secondary insulation. You want to get it out. You're creating a different temperate zone up there, and you're more likely to have some condensation problems. So all in all, the foam job I thought was a pretty good foam job. We reported what we found to the weatherization agency and said, you should do, make some corrections here. And they said, go ahead and insulate the walls. So was that ignorance, apathy, fear, or greed? Might be a lot in there. I don't know. But it didn't really leave the guy, to me, with a good product. The other thing that happened there, I think I'm missing a lot of my slides, is they sold a furnace to him. I mean, they didn't sell a furnace to him. They just installed the furnace. At least it was a good sized furnace. It was a pretty small furnace, so I'll give them that. But these things, as you do a few of these things, you install an Energy Star furnace, you put in spray foam, you foam the rim joists. So it all sounds good, but I don't know if it was going to make out well for him with this moisture, with this unconditioned porch. So hopefully weatherization went through and corrected the other issues. This is actually a single wide mobile home, but we'll call it a single wide mobile home after we get done with it. They hired a contractor, directed them to address complaint of freezing pipes. Contractor charged them cash and foamed the underbelly. I forgot, retired lady, the details, but when our tech went underneath, he found some foam, and then he found about a half of it not foamed. So now what do you do? So if he only foamed half of it, he probably didn't nip tuck it. So we were able to convince a program that we need to foam the rest of that. But, we talk of chucks in the trucks, and we talk of people not doing good quality work and taking pictures of their work. And, it's interesting where NYSERDA and the programs have gone with the company cam. I said before that you go to these classes, you pick something up, and in 2017 was down at the national conference in the last session. You want to get out of Dodge, a long drive, and I went and sat, and this guy was taking pictures, talking about his audit process, taking pictures, and everybody grilled him, and he said, well, I use company cam. And I walked out of there, looked at it, and I said, that's for us. That is going to solve a lot of our problems. So we've been on company cam for about 8 years. And the only flaws you have is when the tech opens it up and doesn't get the right job to put it in. But you can go back and figure out the date, and you can then slide it back over to the job. But it is a tremendous tool to keep track of those pictures. Yes?
Can you just say a little bit more about what company cam is?
Sure. So it's an app, and I think they got some presentations later on today where you open up the app and you have the address, and it's geotagged to that home. So I take all these pictures. Anybody in my organization that is on that app can see those. Then when the insulator goes there, he or she will take pictures. The HVAC technicians will take pictures, and then the test out, and they're all stored. You can set up the geotag location. You actually must do that now, and the date and time stamp. So has saved us some wonderful problems. Hey, you broke my siding. No, we didn't. On day one, your siding was broken when we got there. So it's a nice protectionary tool, and it's just good for everybody. It documents for any programs, rebates, the customer and the contractor. And one of the biggest challenges I get is you can kind of take too many pictures. You know, we can get audits with 350 pictures. We can get jobs with 1,000. So I don't think our editing skills are that good. But let's see. So on that home, I wanted to pressure pan the ducts. So the rep called me and I said, well, let's go through our process. And this shows that you got to improvise. This is not a pressure pan. This is a bath flow fan meter. So there's a giant hole on it. I said, tape over it. All we got to do is make a pressure difference between the duct. And we could show that the duct was half inside and half outside the home. So the half foam job didn't really do great. So this home right here was I tried to protect the innocent, but since this says empower, I'm going to have to just run with it. So this was a big two-family home. Wasn't really that big, and it was it's kind of a mansard to a flat roof home, and they really wanted insulation. So one side had just been serviced the year before, and I looked at the mansard, and sometimes you really got to think about the job. And I wasn't comfortable really bringing an insulation project to NYSERDA because a mansard can be considered 3 different attics, but the side walls are, kind of roofing materials, and they can sometimes connect to the upper roof and sometimes they don't. The upper roof was a rubber roof, so it wasn't going to be able to be vented. And they wanted the mansards done, and it just didn't seem like a good opportunity. So I opted to not do it. I told them the power was making some changes. I said, I don't have time to try to work this thing up and get it approved. It's complicated. And I think it was going to be costly. So is everybody familiar with what a mansard roof is? So it really, it came out of France, where their tax base was you pay for your square foot, your taxes, your property taxes. So if the surface has roofing materials on it, it's not taxable for square footage. So we will do great lengths to go and not pay taxes. So they made the ugly mansard roof. So we looked at this job. We said to the client, we said, I can't do this right now. We maybe could revisit this. I said, but your furnace is quite old. Would you like to entertain one of those? And they said, yes. So this is the brand new furnace that the other contractor put in. It's an 80,000 BTU single stage furnace with an output of 78,000 in May or January. 78,000 BTUs output. We put in, I think I played with my presentation too much this morning. We put in a 40,000 two-stage furnace. So the low input is 28,000 BTUs. So why would I size a furnace that small when the other one's that big? Why would I risk that? Could it be that I looked at the manual J, or I looked at the usage, or I used my experience? That fear of not properly sizing a furnace ends up in oversizing. So it's been talked about for years upon years about oversizing furnaces. I'd love to go back to this client and pull these to usage. I don't know if we could get the rental and see where they stand now a year or two after. I would think that the two-stage 40 is bringing a lot more comfort, a lot more quietness, and a lot more energy savings. Tough to say if their temperatures are being set at the same temperature. So one of the things that, as you go through this, like what is the challenge? When we go to diagnose homes, we have client goals, we have funding goals, we have company goals, right? If you work for a company, they're gonna get in, get out, get this done, get this under budget. We have to do the tests, and this is one of the biggest things that I think is missing in the industry is you can't do, there's 50 diagnostic tests you can do in a home. You can't do them all. It's just not, it would take a day or two to do all these tests. You have to determine what tests are needed. The tests that are needed in a 1910 built home are different than the tests that you need in the 2-year-old home. Take pictures, document, be proud of your work. So, manual J's. So manual J is a load calculation for choosing equipment. It's widely considered to have some fudge factors in it. And then it's data in, data out. So one of the best things you can do with a manual J is find out what the customer sets their thermostat at historically and see their usage and look at the heating degree days, right? Somebody said earlier they were having a very rough winter. It feels to me like it's more of an average winter. The past two have been maybe more warmer. So you want to look at that heating degree days and really true that up. But this mindset of, well, I just want to make sure, put in more size. And I can give you an example of that. My lead heating technician came over, probably been installing furnaces since he was 14 years old, right? Father was a heating guy. Worked for another home performance contractor. And after like a year, and I was speccing stuff, and I said, hey, what'd you do at the other company when you sized furnaces, how'd you decide between a 40 and a 60? And he said, we didn't install 40s. They were all 60s. And I said, you came from a spray foam company. I'm like, you just willy-nilly put in 60s all the time? Yep, that's what we did. And now here's a guy, I've never installed a furnace in my life. Here's a guy looking at me going, why are we putting these 40s in? I don't want to go out on Christmas Day and service these things for not enough heat. And I had to look at him and say, you're going to have to trust me on this. You're going to have to trust me on this. And we got through our first, our winter with the -5 degree day. And he came in, I said, we had no calls. I'm like, we got this down. You tighten down this home, you're going to solve a lot of problems, and then you can right size the equipment. And these are really 15-year decisions you're making for these people. People always say, well, what if they want it 80 degrees? That's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that, but what am I legally supposed to design the heat load to? 68 degrees. So yeah, maybe it's a conversation. If you want to let them choose a bad decision, make sure you have a sign off, but we just see this a lot. I knew I was rolling through this a little fast. There's another case study missing. So I'll tell you about it. It was another home where down in the basement, a little Cape Cod, they had just got a new furnace and a rim joist like the year before. It was a new owner, so I couldn't really tell, but I was like, this looks like a program job. $60,000, 2-stage furnace, the standard in the market. That's what you sell. That's what your vendor sells to you. That's what you love to sell. Usage was really low. Second floor was ridiculously uncomfortable, she said. Turned on the blower door, and it was capes, but the cape, like the drywall went, like normally it stops here on an E-wall, it was down to all the way down on one side. The IR pictures just clearly showed it, and we got it approved through Empower, cut some drywall, foamed some areas, cutting the blower door in half. And it wasn't a huge blower door to begin with, but it was like 2,400 and cut it down to like 1,600 or 1,200. So great, we've tightened that down, but their low fire on their 60 is like 42,000. Had I put the furnace in, their low fire would be 28,000. And the truth be told, I need to get with my vendors because I need a 30,000 BTU. And sorry, I know we're supposed to be electrifying, but sometimes we got to look at the gas furnaces or what the customer has for a budget. But and so this is an example. This is a friend of mine's home. We slowly did this home. We insulated and air sealed it, and he's a childhood friend. Hands me the keys and says, "I trust you. This is what I want to fix. Do this." And trust me, but it was like, hey, he's got a closet that sticks out in his garage. He got mold. We got to measure your humidity. Your humidity's too high. Now we get static shocks and bloody noses. We like the humidity high. Yeah, but your house doesn't like the humidity high. We're going to have to insulate this closet that sticks out into the garage, and then we insulated the top. And so we tightened this down. We did a heat pump hybrid water heater, did a 2-stage 40,000 BTU furnace, and I think we took the blower door from like 26 down to like 18. He wanted windows, and we don't really do windows. And I said, we could do the windows. We could get them done for you. And he ended up going with a large window installer. And I said, you should check how they seal their windows. And he said, well, what am I looking to ask for? I go, well, you don't want fiberglass stuff in there. So we called them up, and they said, well, we put fiberglass in there. And he said, do you do foam? And he said, only if someone asks. Now, my friend is very convinced that these windows are, which cost more than my attic insulation, my rim joist insulation, my furnace and air conditioner, and my hot water tank. Cost more than that. He's convinced that blower door is going to come down immensely. 1965 built, split level. I haven't been back there yet to do that blower door test, but it's going to be like 100 CFM, I bet, right? And so really the end result is the next presentation will show that dollar pie. What did you get out of that? Yeah, you got your windows done. The biggest challenge with the windows is you don't get the rough frame opening. You know, they're not touching that. That's lost in no man's land. The wall insulation person isn't going to do it, and the window person probably isn't going to do it. So what I put in the guy's home is a 40,000 2-stage. And so this is to kind of show that we're designing at 5 degrees. So we're designing here. If we do this design, he needs 40,000 on a 5-degree day. How often are we living in the 5-degree day when you're not at a conference in Saratoga? We're really probably living a little bit more in the 25 temperature range, and that comes in at 28,000. So that's my second stage. That's beautiful. I think I've signed this well. My other competitors in the market, they're firing at 42,000 on a 25-degree day. On a 45-degree day, they're still firing at 42,000 BTU. So this isn't to say design to 25 degrees. It's just to show that where we're designing and where we're living at are two different things. If you, the worst case, if you had an electric space heater, you could probably supplement on how often, how many hours in the year we're living in the 5 degree or minus 5 degrees. It usually doesn't. It's crazy to design for catastrophic events. It's good to think about catastrophic events, but you know, you think of some of these areas that have flash floods. You know, they're not. There was an area down in Cohocton who this summer that had a flash flood. They'd never flooded in 40 years. The lady's home was flooded out, and is this happen all the time? No, it was just a deluge down a hill, wiped out a place that normally didn't get that. I don't know if you can necessarily design for that, and maybe you shouldn't design for, minus 20 degrees if we're not going to really live there. And I guess my analogy to that is there's nothing wrong with buying a suit for your funeral. It's just you don't need to wear it every day. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not. This could be your idea of a manual J. When I was a kid, that's what it was called. I thought I changed all this. I was going to take this out. This was for a different audience. So all industries have bad actors. I don't know why these are up here. I mean, I think some of these guys are all good in their crafts, but everybody's going to have it, right? We get, we hear something in the news, we're like, throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's probably not the answer, but how do we improve the industry, right? I mean, what I just said about the BTUs, you might all be sitting there going, this guy is full of smoke. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And that's possible. But the things that I see and the calls that I get a lot of calls for, we just had our home done and it's uncomfortable. And we just had our home done and we have ice. And we just had our home done. And so that doesn't bode well. That was a lot of waste of my time, to be honest with you. Like I want to say to somebody, usually the worst possible cases where you're out there and oh, we're getting 3 quotes, and then they do the work and they call back a year later and go, I still have ice dams, and we go over and they didn't air seal, and it's like, well, there's nothing. The only thing I can do now is charge you extra to undo what they just did. That's all I can do. And they look at you and go, what? Huh? No, I don't understand. I bought what you said, attic insulation. I didn't really say that. I said air seal, get your blower door, get your concrete numbers. So I thought this was great. If anybody was in the Empower program back when Kelvin was in, I never really realized who Kelvin was. I was like, oh, Kelvin, there's degrees, and then there's a fridge called Kelvinator. And this quote just, it really resonates with me. I often say that when you can measure what you are speaking about and express it in numbers, you know something about it. But when you cannot express it in numbers, your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. So I kind of love the old, way they spoke. I don't. But that makes a lot of sense, and if you think about other industries, I've been in the habit, right? When you go out to homes and they're older homes, they need a lot of help. You do blower doors and you're like 4,500, 3,500, 4,500, 3,500. And then you get to a home and you go, it's 2,000. And you go, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good number. And it's like, what does that mean? If they're uncomfortable, if their bills are high, if their furnace is oversized, then pretty good is a crappy thing to say to somebody. And if you think about some of the industries, if you get surveys, they'll be like, how many stars, right? Google, how many stars? It doesn't say pretty good, not bad, they were great. It has the stars so that we can kind of compare those to other companies. The other, maybe example of that is doctors are really using this on a pain management scale. The opioid, whatever the epidemic of the OxyContins or whatever, they realize that really pain is, I'm in a lot of pain. Well, how bad is the pain? And there's this scale of 1 to 10. And so I think we have to start thinking in those terms of numerical quantification of what we're installing, what our results are. So this is a board that I had in my office and just wrote down for like 4 months. And I call it the BDAC board. This is the blower door arse kicking board. So I want our crew, our auditors, and our air sealing technicians to understand what we're trying to do. So other companies are, hey, we'll get 10%. No, we're looking for big, big numbers. If we got a big work scope, we want big, big reductions. And these aren't, this is a wide range of houses. You got 1925 up to 1998. Huge CFM reductions, huge percentage drops. And they run the gamut. You got some unique homes, you got some old homes, you got some, there's a perfect example, a nice tight home, 1601. I'll guarantee you there's other contractors that go, it's pretty good, pretty good. Now we over tightened it, and now we got to do some pretty good ventilation. We got a pretty good backdrafting hot water tank. So it's there, the proof's there. I'm not going to tell you every job I get that. It's hard to diagnose a home, but all the contractors that would have chose 40, 50, 60% not to do a blower door would never know this, right? So that's the concern I have of not doing blower doors is it because the fan is 50 pounds? Is it because it's an extra 20 minutes? Is it because you don't want to know how bad you suck at this? And that's my concern. So now, there are reasons not to perform a blower door. I'm not saying you should go into every home and do a blower door. Vermiculite is one of those reasons. I think it's an issue that as an industry we're going to have to solve beyond the zonalite situation. So if you're not familiar with vermiculite, it's this wonderful product. You can use it in your gardens today. There's nothing to worry about it. In that particular instance, they still sell it. But most of it came out of a mine in Libby, Montana, and the mine was contaminated with asbestos. So the product itself is not asbestos, it's just attached with it. When they mined it, there could be some asbestos fiber. So the challenge is this is actually the worst of all asbestos threats because it was never intended to go into the home. This was intended to go into the home and it was moderately bonded. But when you're talking ALM siding, that stuff is cementitious put together. And so even if it breaks apart, is one loose fiber coming out of it, maybe. But this was never intended to be in your home, the asbestos that can be connected with this. So about 14 years ago, New York State said this is all presumed asbestos. My first few jobs I did, when I found it, I would get a sample and go test it. And the 2 or 3 jobs I did, there was no asbestos with it. So I think and so the theory is you can't test this stuff because, and it sort of makes sense, who's ever run out of a job of one particular cellulose or roofing type and you go to a different vendor. So it's not that, we just don't know where all this vermiculite came from or was sourced from the same non-asbestos type manufacturer. So I think it's something that we're going to have to figure out. Pardon?
The way that we were all sampling it years ago wouldn't have picked up the asbestos necessarily because it would have been all the way down to the bottom. And
yeah.
Or like vacuum and extracting it.
Yeah.
Scooping up bags full of that.
Yeah. You know, one of the worst things we see is you'll go up into an attic and it's, you know, in regards to attics, I will tell you some of the qualitative things that's a beautiful attic. You know, a beautiful attic is one you can move around in and there's not much to move to insulate and air seal. And not on more than 5 occasions, we have gone up to an attic and seen a bag of zonalite vermiculite, not just laid in the attic, but they threw it and it broke. And I always try to look at a house and see what the story is behind it. Like, how did that work? The guy's neighbor was like, you know, I got this bag of insulation over here that I didn't need. Throw it up in your attic. Like, it completely makes no sense when you see it. But you walk out and you're like, well, this is crazy. They just ruined, this project for themselves. Somebody did. I mean, usually it's, 40 years ago. But I just wonder how that happened. And then we got a problem. We got a problem here, folks, that I think no one talks about. In New York State, maybe every state, you can remove anything you want in your home. You can remove this. And as a contractor, you're coming to work in the home. You have no idea what's been removed by a shop vac. That's why, dust masks are a joke. You should be wearing a respirator with the appropriate cartridges when you go into an attic because you have no idea what has happened in that home in 50, 70, 120 years. So, home under construction, you wouldn't do fireplace. We're always trying to call, don't run your fireplace, don't burn your stove, clean it. I don't want to pull the ashes in. If I do, I'm not backing them out because I told you about this. So I don't really say that. So poor reasons not to do a blower door. I'm not good at PowerPoints, folks. I don't know what's going on here. Transite chimneys, the stuff is like concrete. Mold, like I'll see people say, that's right, mold like material. Like I've gone to homes and people are like, well, the previous contractor didn't do it because there was some mold over in the basement, this little spot. And so I think of myself, the blower door is going to move that stuff. You got a lot of leakage at the floating slab. And then if you're so afraid of the mold for you or the customer, why did you propose to air seal this home? Right? Shouldn't you be solving this monstrous mold-like material problem? That's what I would think you would do, unless the blower door fan's a little heavy. You don't want to get it out there. 9-inch floor tile, totally bonded. The experts tell you some of the stuff, just leave it in place. It's encapsulated. It's the disturbing of it that becomes a problem. One of my tests, I got 2 merged PowerPoints. Well, they're not really merged. Apparently they're separate on another file here. Is I did a pressure test inside the ductwork in my home when the furnace fan was on, and it went to 20 pascals. So the air moving inside that ductwork is 20 pascals. When you turn the blower door on, it's negligible. The air is not blowing around the ductwork and ripping the duct tape off, in my opinion. Again, go back to that first slide. I'm not an attorney. I'm not telling you to go do it. I'm just challenging you on the thought process. When I first started, anything that looked like asbestos, with the exception of siding, I would proceed with caution. But now I look at it and I think, when you have tape on a duct that has expanded and contracted over years and pulled apart, if those fibers really disengaged, where did they go? Did they go to the floor and then, on that sunny day when you can see all those particles? And my point is this, I don't think it's a bigger risk as we think it is. If a blower door is 20-mile-per-hour winds on each side of the house, have you ever opened up your door when it was a 20-mile-per-hour wind? Were you afraid of asbestos ripping off your ductwork? That's my take. And so there is times that we don't do blower doors. I'm not saying I run to every home, but some of the homes that I've been to, called a couple weeks ago, 1977 built home. These are the type of calls I get. Yeah, they said I should call you because I went through the program, but you could do some other things. Okay. What'd you have done? We had attic insulation, a rim joist, and a hybrid hot water tank, and some glass block windows done. Okay, when was your home built? 77. He's like, yeah, we got a furnace on the second floor and an electric baseboard on the second floor. We really wanted heat pumps. Okay, so I don't know if it was everywhere, but like 77, they were building houses with just electric because of the gas ban. So sort of made sense, told the story. I was like, how big is that thing oversized? They put in a first floor furnace on this 1977 built home. So I never went to the home because I said, there's nothing we can do. And I just said, well, tell me what your blower door is. And he said, well, I didn't have a blower door test. Or usually they say, what is a blower door test? Then I describe it and they go, well, I didn't have one of those. Do you have a fireplace? No. Well, why did you not get a blower door? You should call the contractor. Sorry, I sometimes say you should call NYSERDA and ask why you didn't get a blower door. Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Sometimes. Sometimes they never had it. So I just think it's a challenge. I don't know how many are being done and how many are not being done. But it's a critical tool that we need to start using to hold people accountable. Again, can't be done all the time. My proposition is that we need another. If they're being lazy, then let's do something different. Then let's make them detail the depressurization. So if you're not out there doing audits, when you turn on a bath fan or a dryer vent, the home is going to depressurize. You can actually kind of extrapolate a little bit of what the blower door is out of that. Let's have them measure bath fans mandatorily. Let's make them work harder if they're not going to carry around the 50-pound blower door, so that we get some more concrete data on the home. 25 pascals. What if we went down to that? 10 pascals. It seems like we should be able to come up with a system.
Jeff, at the end of the day, if you're an HVAC contractor, anytime you're running a manual J, anytime you're designing a system, whether it's a heat pump, a boiler, a furnace, blower door should be run every single time.
Right.
How do you accurately design a system or size a system without doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, there's times, it's sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to find a reason not to do it. I don't even know what's in this home. I can't get in that bedroom, And it's really like a blower door. Like, you shouldn't just show up and do a blower door. You should climb up in the attic, right? You should pull back the fiberglass to make sure there's not vermiculite underneath it. You need to do a full inspection before you do that blower door test. And I'll tell you, have we done blower doors in homes and we went to do an install? I still don't know the legality of this. Can we turn this thing off? Well, we'll be doing wall insulation, and under a window, you'll drill a hole and vermiculite will just pour out of the hole. and it's like, how, the only thing I can think is they replaced the window, and somebody said, you know what the new process is? We're drilling a hole, we're filling vermiculite under this window. Like, I don't even know what we're supposed to do with that. Did we just create a hazmat situation with, vermiculite dropping all over the place? So home performance is peeling onions, and we do the best we can out there. So this got a contentious last year. I appreciate you guys and ladies not getting on me. People were yelling at me that I was going to kill people for undersizing and doing blower doors. So it's just my thought is, if your fear of doing a blower door that ALM dust will detach from a home, it's probably unlikely in my opinion. There's probably other things you probably could fear in the home that is probably blowing around. So I love this lotto sign here. Is apparently if you played a lotto, you have to provide your ticket to prove you won. You can't just walk into a dealer and say, I got the winning numbers from last night. You have to prove it. And that's what I think we as an industry have to do a little better. We have to prove it. And how we do that is different metrics. We use metrics of square footage installed, new furnaces sold, profitability on jobs. The list goes on, but they're not really the greatest metrics. You can't just say you won, you actually have to prove it. Blower door reductions, energy usage, no mold in the attic are good metrics to me. Pictures. I'm from the land of Kodak. Is there any better time to be able to take pictures than right now? It's kind of astounding. Taking pictures of the work, and really, when I think I gave this presentation, I think it's the first time. I think it's much more mandatory to take these pictures. We get called out to homes from big companies, and they won't let us in their attic. They want to know why they're uncomfortable, and we say we're going in the attic, or we're not coming out. And we go in, we pull back the fiber, and we see the air sealed attic, and the customer got right on the phone and called them up, and my rep said it went something like this. Well, how do you know your attic's not air sealed? Well, I had an energy audit, and the rep went up there and found that the top plates were sealed. Oh, who was that? And she's got on speakerphone, and they said, oh, it's Wise Home Energy. And they went, oh yeah, they're pretty good. So she called us back later because the contract said, and that's where you should really have good contracts, is the contract said we're going to air seal these penetrations. And they called her back and they said, we normally don't air seal if there's already insulation in the attic. Get out of the industry. Because you got to find a unicorn in the 1905 built home with no insulation. That's all we find up in attics mostly. And the other thing they said was, you don't want to make the house too tight. We're still hearing that 20 years later. So you saw my blower door list there before. Over in Rochester, south of Rochester, is a passive house builder. And he used to give live tours. There's actually a video tour of his home. My contact information will be on at the end. His blower door, I'm guessing it's a 2,500 square foot home. His blower door is 75 CFM. We're getting down to 690 on a, and we're thrilled. He's at 75. He doesn't really do it with a blower door. He's got to use a window, and he's got to put a duct blaster in there. And the leakiest part of his whole home is trying to seal the duct blaster in the window. So he's been living in there for 10 years, and he heats it with a candle, but the carbon is all over the walls. So now he got a couple of, I think he said that he panicked at the end, and he threw in an extra heat pump because he was panicked. And you're talking 7,000 BTU heat pumps. ERVs, and you know, it's a really neat home in that it shows you, he's got through the tour of you know what the home's insulated, and it's no foam. It's all done with cellulose and tapes, I believe. So we can tighten these things up, but that's a big company using that age-old line that you don't want to tighten the house up too much, and it's like, so really we call BS when we're in the homes. So what's the fix? Education, right? And what I'm standing here telling you today, 12 years ago, I wouldn't have known. I would have been, that's a pretty good blower door. You know, I used that line many a times, you know, until you gain thirst and reach out of your comfort zone and keep going. I don't think, you know, NYSERDA or WAP or utilities have the resources to police it, QA it. You know, maybe they can analyze their data more, I would think, is one option. And really, you know, how do you train people, right? Is it with the stick or the carrot? I think maybe incentivized with carrots on good quality work. So quality work is metrics of maybe not getting a bad QA score, but maybe it's like crushing it blower doors, crushing it energy usage. We did a heat pump job some years ago, 5-6 years ago. The lady called up and said, my bills are through the roof since I got this thing. I said, send over your bills. And I think the whole house was like 84 kWh for the whole year. This is heating, cooling, washing, drying. She was using $120 a month, and she thought her bills were high. So it's all relative, right? She's not noticing that the cost of the kilowatt hour has gone up. It's just her bills. And every other person I would know would be thrilled to have this $120 a month energy bill. So it's, what do you compare it to? You compare it to your previous usage. So yeah, I don't have all the answers. Performance bonuses, you know, we try to do that in-house when guys kick the daylights out of a blower door. We make sure they're proud of it. Last week I had this, I found a new house last week. A couple weeks ago, we went, and it's a cape, a colonial, and a ranch put together, and it was built like that. I don't know, I got to come up with a name for it, and it all merged in this one 10 by 10 room of debauchery where you could look into all the areas, the knee wall, the ranch, and the colonial, and that part wasn't drywalled. And we were at 4,400, and they were finishing up. I said, take the blower door out, and I company cam, I can watch the picture. And I'm like, 3,600. There's no way we're getting 800 out of this. We vacuumed it out. No way. And I'm like, do I got to get out there? I moved on, and he came back, and the next day he's like, yeah, you know, we cut that thing down to 22. And I said, wait, I thought 36. He's like, well, we weren't done. I was just getting, you know, kind of a pre to see where we were. So cut the blower door in half. Yeah. Maybe if the home is 1,200 CFM and 1,200 square foot, you're not going to cut that in half. But you have to look at each job and use those diagnostic tools. So some of the terms that we should be looking at: blower doors, ACH 50. You know, the blower door in itself, like, it can be low, but if that leakage is up top, you could create mold and moisture. So even if it's super tight on an ACH, if you have a leakage spot to the top of your home in an unconditioned attic that's not properly ventilated, you can, out of 50 CFM, you can make a lot of problems. Zonal pressures, infrared scans. When you are, if you haven't been through the training, the blower door with the infrared scan, you take the picture before, then you get the blower door up as it's coming toward you. You're going to see those fingers. The smoke you use when it's going away from you. So if the blower door is pressurized and you're inside, you can smoke the area and see it disappear. These tools used to be expensive, and they're coming down. Moisture meters. When you're foaming, you want to have this. You want to know your data on your wood. If you spray wet foam, you're going to have a problem. It's not going to cure. It's going to pull away. And if you trap moisture behind there, you're going to create mold. These are moisture contact meters. So these are some of the things that, I'm more of a data geek now than I was in the beginning, is attic ventilation. My company, we go to attic ventilation seminars. If you talk to some of the folks, manufacturers, a couple of big ones, they'll put on presentations locally in your area sometimes they're online, sometimes you can talk to your distributors, but it's good to know that when you go to them, they don't ever talk about air sealing. The reason why is probably because if you don't air seal, you get to sell twice as much ventilation, right? So you got to kind of watch their the reasoning behind what they're doing, but they never talk about air sealing. They said ventilation is going to get rid of all your moisture. Well, what about air sealing first? Let's air seal it. Getting into IAQ at the end, VOCs, CO2. These are the things that we're going to have to start measuring as we tighten up homes. Not an exhaustive list, but you should become a voracious student reader of the industry. Here's a couple: our standard residential energy, the BPI book, Corbett Lunsford's Home Performance Diagnostics, Building Science, Home Comfort book. Great books that give you different insights. When you're in a home, there are so many different things going on. I used to say whenever I train somebody, I'm like, the home is the home. The people and their possessions are what's going to throw you off your game. If I had my druthers, I'd rather go to a home and have it completely empty and just go about my job and test the home. The people are going to want to take you over to this little cold spot over here. I see some ants over here. And you're getting so thrown off. You just really want to look at the home. And there's times when I got out of a home and you're like, I missed something there. I totally didn't see that portion of the home and needed to investigate that deeper. House Needs to Breathe, great book. And get involved in different groups. There's different education sites out there. Don't believe everything you see or read. You got to kind of, vet it yourself and just keep learning. I always say, I don't know everything. I'm going to keep trying to learn and encourage everybody else to, because what we're doing, I always say that, remember in 1950s, when you go up into an attic and there's a 3-inch bat up in that attic, remember that crew was there 70 years ago and they were like, this is state of the art. We're gonna make these people so comfortable. And we now come up 7 years later and go, look at this trash. Oh my gosh. It's gotta come out. We gotta fix it. So well, you folks are lucky because I deleted a ton of slides, so you're missing some stuff. So I love talking about this stuff. If you have any questions or comments, there's my contact information. Maybe it's in the app. I don't know. Any questions for me?
With air sealing, I noticed in your case studies, are you more often than not removing the original insulation in the attic space?
This is a great question. He's asking if we're removing the insulation in the attic, and some of the program. I don't know how the portals work. I always joke I fix houses. I don't play in portals. So it's like I want to ask the crew, what is your preference? How are you going to do this the best? When you have cell, like I'm always amazed that they can go into an attic with cell and pull that stuff back and air seal it. I'm thinking it's just falling back. And what are you getting out of it? 80, 85, 90%, so fiber bat, easier to pull back if it's maybe a newer 20, 30-year-old one. So I want to look to more the crew, and we're still trying to figure that out. But you get a much better product, and so one of the things that if you're not in the field, one of the things when you're treating an attic is you're typically going to baffle it if you got soffits. So you're over at the edge, it's the worst possible spot, and sometimes we go and remove insulation, And I'd show up at the job and they'd be putting the baffle up. I'm like, you got like a 6-inch gap. We can't blow that. You gotta stop the cellulose from going down in the soffit. So they were used to having some insulation there that they could stuff in there. And now we're to the point where I'm like, well, if we're gonna pull it all out, then we really should foam the baffle in place. If we have enough pitch, I want that air just to go above the baffle so we don't get any wind wash through the baffle. And in each home's different. Some have no soffits at all. It's the fascia is the gutters right up against the fascia of the home, where some have ranches, you can have good 4-foot soffits, but it's such a critical detail, right? I mean, and depending on your pitch, you're going to struggle to get air sealing over there. But to me, that's one of the critical spots is over at the baffle. But I think that's the downside. Once somebody blows insulation in there, I had another one, not in the slide, but the guy called and we apparently don't have a great CRM or we mislabeled it. We went out to the home and then when we got there, we had 2 company cam folders, and 2 years ago he had fiber in this ranch, and ranches can be just home runs for fixing. They're kind of can be straightforward. There's the tiger trap, which is your staircase down. So if your drywall and your staircase looks like this, that's what it looks like up in the attic. If it's flat, you got a continuous ceiling barrier. People still are skipping these tiger traps, drop soffits, recessed lights. So he calls 2 years later, I got ice dams. So I don't come off as maybe the smoothest person. I'm like, well, but we told you what to do. We gave you the proposal. Yeah, no, I had that done, No, you didn't. You didn't. Blower door. What's your blower door pre and post? And I think at the time we were maybe doing comfort homes where there was no pre-blower door. So we couldn't even tell him how crappy the work was he had done, And, maybe I need some social skills because I was like, all you did is drove the cost up $2,000. Plus it's 2 years later. So it actually went up a little bit more, right? I got to pull all this stuff out now. I can't screw around pulling up the fiberglass. I got to vacuum all the cell out now and redo this. I didn't get that job. I don't think anybody got it. I think he was just going to keep calling around and try to vent his attic, and just keep getting ventilation in there to see if he could stop his ice dams. Yes?
How's your perspective with like the Honeywell QA side change after kind of working on both sides of the coin? Are you more sympathetic? Do you think they could do better on the QA side? How do you feel about that?
There's a nice shirt of folks in the room, and I'm being recorded. No, like I said, there's different metrics. If the contractor didn't do the blower door, then the QA probably has no reason to do the blower door. So right there, they're probably they might even have a policy. Why do a blower door if no one else did it? I will say that I've heard there's different QA. Everybody adds individual skills to their own job. I've heard there's QA folks that are really getting after the blower door. And then I've seen some that don't want to do it. And they're at a challenge because of asbestos, right? I mean, the TV commercials and, you're in Rochester, Kodak, mesothelioma. And so everybody's, afraid to get sued and in personal health, right? So if they don't want to do it, I don't know what the answer is there. I think it's more of make them measure something else, make them measure the bath fan. I just did a experiment in my own home. I should have thrown that in these pictures where the bath fan is, I'm not good at PowerPoints or cleaning, and it was all crusty, right? It was all a lot of dust, and I'm a nerd, so I come home and I measure it, and it's 50 CFM. And then I pull it down, and I was shocked because it's 40-year-old bath fan. I would have bet money this was a 20 CFM bath fan, and it was 50. I'm like, that was great, and the thing's been like screaming, and so I was like, I think I either got to replace the fan, and so I pull it down and I clean the grate. But while I was cleaning the grate, I'm like, well, let me measure it just with no grate on it. And it went to 75 CFM. I was like, oh, that's great. And then I put the grate back on, and it was still 75. So the restriction of the grate wasn't the problem. It was I had that much dust and dirt in it, which it didn't hit me like, well, that should be an indication. It's actually working pretty well. It's pulling in. It's more an indication that I got a poor filtration system in my furnace, or my windows are open all the time, which could be the latter. So, but it's like, that's a phenomenal measurement, right? I got a bath fan. It's only on as long as I'm in there because I don't have a timer on it. I don't have it set up properly. But it's a measurement that, honestly, we're not going to measure bath fans every time. And we want to measure them because you could be in a home for 8 hours. So you have to kind of pick and choose your path in the home. So I don't know if I answered that. I mean, to me, no one's really looking at that sizing. There's no penalties to oversize a furnace. It's all subjective. That's just me telling you they're oversized. And I also admitted that I'm not a heating guy. So take it with a grain of salt. What I'm telling you is I've installed hundreds of these and I don't have any phone calls on them. So I'm either thinking it works or I'm thinking we change our number weekly. Forget which one. So
some of these oversized furnaces being two-stage, it's really a one-stage furnace with an oversized second stage.
Yeah. People sell what they like to sell. To a person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail, they say. So, any other questions? I'm so glad I skipped a lot of these slides because now I can give this presentation again. So, well, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.